The night was still in Crestwood, Maryland, the kind of quiet that settled over suburban streets after midnight. Streetlights cast soft halos on empty sidewalks, and the hum of distant traffic was barely audible. Behind the wheel of her charcoal gray sedan, Lena Harris drove steadily, her eyes scanning the road with practiced precision. It was late, and she was tired, but her mind was sharp. She was always sharp. Lena, a CIA operative working undercover, was wrapping up a low-profile assignment in Crestwood. Her cover as a freelance analyst had held for months, and she was ready to move on. At a deserted intersection, Lena eased to a stop, her headlights catching the reflective edge of a stop sign. She checked her mirrors out of habit, noting the absence of other cars. Her fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel as she turned right onto Maple Avenue. Moments later, a flash of red and blue lights erupted in her rearview mirror, accompanied by the wail of a siren. Lena's pulse didn't spike. She was trained for this, but her senses heightened. She glanced back, watching a police cruiser close the distance. With measured calm, Lena pulled to the curb, killed the engine, and reached for her license and registration. The cruiser stopped behind her, its lights pulsing like a heartbeat. Two officers stepped out, their silhouettes sharp against the glare. The taller one, Officer Derek Vance, approached her window with a confident stride, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. His partner, Officer Paul Grayson, shorter and broader, lingered near the rear of her car, his posture tense. "Good evening, ma'am," Vance said, his voice smooth but edged with authority. "Do you know why we stopped you?" Lena met his gaze, her expression neutral. "No, officer. I stopped at the sign, and I wasn't speeding." Vance's mouth twitched, a hint of a smirk. "You rolled through that stop back there. That's a violation." Lena's eyes narrowed slightly, but she kept her tone even. "I'm certain I stopped, officer. License and registration," Vance cut in, his patience thinning. Lena handed over her documents, her movements deliberate. Vance scanned them, his flashlight lingering on her face. "You live around here?" "Yes," Lena replied, noting the way his eyes lingered on her Virginia plates. Grayson called from the back, his voice sharp. "Yo, Vance, check this out." Vance handed her papers back. "Stay put," he ordered, joining his partner at her trunk. Lena watched them through her side mirror, catching their hushed exchange. Grayson pointed at something, and Vance nodded, their movements to coordinated, to rehearsed. A flicker of suspicion sparked. In her chest not fear, but clarity. Something was wrong. Vance returned, his face stern. "Step out of the vehicle, Mum." Lena tilted her head. "May I ask why?" "We've got reason to believe you're carrying contraband," Vance said, his tone flat, almost scripted. Lena's jaw tightened. "Contraband, you're mistaken." "We'll see," Vance replied, gesturing for her to exit. Grayson was already at her trunk, lifting it with a flourish. There, in plain view, sat a small plastic bag filled with white powder. "Well, look at that," Grayson said, his voice dripping with mock surprise. Lena's eyes flicked to the bag, then back to the officers. She hadn't put it there, she was certain. This was a setup. "That's not mine," she said, her voice steady. "Sure it isn't," Vance said, smirking. "You're under arrest for possession with intent to distribute." As Grayson moved to cuff her, Lena didn't resist, her gaze locking onto his. "You're making a mistake," she said softly, her words carrying a weight that made Grayson hesitate. For a fraction of a second. "We'll see about that," Vance said, leading her to the cruiser. As they drove away, Lena stared out the window, her mind already mapping out her next move. These officers thought they'd scored an easy win, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. The Crestwood police station was a squat, aging building with flickering fluorescent lights and scuffed linoleum floors. Lena sat in the back of the cruiser as Vance and Grayson pulled into the lot, their smugness palpable. The ride had been silent, save for the crackle of the radio and Vance's occasional chuckle. Lena's hands were cuffed behind her, but her posture remained composed, her dark eyes scanning every detail: the layout of the lot, the cameras above the entrance, the officers milling about. Inside, the station buzzed with the low hum of night shift activity. Vance and Grayson led Lena through the bullpen, drawing curious glances from other officers. "Got a live one," Grayson announced. tossing the plastic bag onto the booking desk with a grin. Caught her with this. Lena's expression didn't waver as they guided her to a fingerprinting station. A young officer, Noah Bennett, worked the desk, his movements hesitant as he glanced at her. "Name?" he asked. His voice softer than the others. "Lena Harris," she replied evenly. "Occupation?" "Consultant," she said, the vague answer rolling off her tongue with ease. Bennett typed it in, his brow furrowing slightly. He seemed out of place, his eyes darting between Lena and the senior officers. Vance leaned against the counter, smirking. "She's a tough one, Bennett. Thinks she's smarter than us." Lena ignored him, her gaze sweeping the room. She noted the placement of every camera, the casual banter among the officers, the faint hum of a computer server in the background. Every detail was a piece of the puzzle she was already assembling. They led her to a holding cell, the metal door clanging shut behind her. The cell was cold, with a single bench bolted to the wall and a narrow window letting in a sliver of moonlight. Grayson lingered outside the bars, his arms crossed. "You don't look scared," he said, almost curious. "Should I be?" Lena asked, her tone calm but laced with steel. Grayson snorted. "You'll break soon enough. They all do." As he walked away, Lena settled onto the bench, her back straight. She wasn't here to panic, she was here to observe. The officers thought they had her trapped, but they were wrong. She'd activated a hidden tracker in her jacket during the ride, a discreet device that would ping her CIA team. They'd find her soon enough. For now, she'd play their game. In the break room, Vance and Grayson lounged with coffee mugs, their laughter echoing. "She didn't even blink," Grayson said, shaking his head. "Most people would be begging by now." "She's just stubborn," Vance replied, smirking. "Won't matter. The report's clean. The evidence is solid. She's done." Bennett, lingering near the coffee machine, overheard them. He'd processed Lena's arrest, and something about it felt off. Her calm demeanor, the way the bag had been found so conveniently, it didn't add up. He kept his mouth shut, but doubt gnawed at him. In a station like Crestwood's, questioning senior officers was a risk, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just helped bury an innocent woman. Back in her cell, Lena closed her eyes, not to sleep but to focus. She listened to the rhythm of the station, the footsteps of officers, the hum of radios, the occasional laugh. Every sound was data, every moment a step closer to unraveling the trap. She knew her team was out there, watching, waiting. The officers had started this game, but Lena would finish it. Morning light crept into Lena's cell, a pale glow that did little to warm the concrete walls. She hadn't moved much during the night, her body still, but her mind active, replaying every detail of the arrest. The station was waking up, the hum of voices and footsteps growing louder. Lena sat on the bench, her posture unyielding, her dark eyes sharp as she listened to the rhythm of the day shift taking over. Officer Bennett was at his desk early, his fingers tapping nervously on his keyboard. He couldn't stop thinking about Lena Harris. Her file was open on his screen, basic details. No priors, nothing unusual except the vague consultant job title. He'd seen plenty of arrests, but none like hers. She wasn't angry or scared. She was waiting. It unsettled him. The cell block door buzzed and Grayson appeared, holding a clipboard. "Morning, Princess," he said, his smirk as grating as ever. "Bail hearings this afternoon. Don't get your hopes up, judges here don't like dealers." Lena met his gaze, her voice steady. "Good to know." Grayson hesitated, thrown by her calm. He muttered something and left, but Lena caught the flicker of unease in his eyes. She leaned back, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Doubt was a powerful weapon, and she'd just planted a seed. At the front desk, Bennett watched Grayson stride past, his usual swagger intact. But something about the case gnawed at Bennett's conscience. He pulled up the arrest report again, scanning the details: failure to stop, nervous behavior, consent to search granted, controlled substance found. It was too neat, too perfect. He glanced at the surveillance feed, where Lena sat motionless, her composure almost unnatural. In the break room, Vance sipped his coffee, grinning at Grayson. "She's gonna crack in court," he said. "They always do when the gavel drops." Grayson nodded, but his smile was forced. "Yeah, slam dunk." Bennett overheard them from the hallway, his stomach twisting. He returned to his desk and, against his better judgment, dug deeper. He cross-referenced Vance and Grayson's past arrests, finding a pattern: minor violations escalating to drug charges, mostly targeting people who looked like Lena. The realization hit him like a punch. This wasn't a mistake, it was a system. Meanwhile, in a nondescript office across town, a phone buzzed. An agent answered. Her voice clipped. Signal confirmed. Crestwood PD, deploying now. Lena's tracker had done its job. Her team was closing in, their movements precise, invisible. Back in her cell, Lena sensed the shift in the air, a subtle tension that told her things were moving. She'd seen Bennett's hesitation, his glances at the monitors. He was the weak link, not because he was corrupt, but because he wasn't. She needed to nudge him further. Bennett paced near the cells, his boots echoing. He stopped outside Lena's, his voice low. Did you really consent to that search? Lena's eyes met his, piercing. What do you think? Officer Bennett. He swallowed hard. I'm just doing my job. That's what they want you to believe, she said, her tone soft but pointed. Bennett walked away, her words echoing in his mind. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to change everything. The Crestwood police station buzzed with the rhythm of a typical afternoon, phones ringing, officers typing reports, the faint scent of stale coffee lingering. Lena Harris sat in her holding cell, her posture as composed as ever. Years of CIA training had taught her to thrive in moments like this, when patience was her greatest weapon. She'd activated her tracker hours ago, and her team was out there, waiting for the right moment. But Lena wasn't idle. Every sound, every glance from an officer was a piece of the puzzle she was assembling. At his desk, Officer Noah Bennett stared at his monitor, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. Lena's arrest report glowed on the screen, its details to perfect: failure to stop, nervous behavior, consent to search, drugs found. He'd seen dozens of reports, but this one felt wrong. Lena's calm demeanor, the convenient discovery of the bag, it didn't add up. He pulled up security footage from the stop, his heart racing. The angle showed Officer Derek Vance opening Lena's trunk, but his hands were obscured before the bag appeared. Bennett's stomach twisted. This wasn't sloppy policing, it was deliberate. In the break room, Vance leaned against the counter, sipping coffee. Bennett's been twitchy, he said to Officer Paul Grayson, his tone casual but laced with suspicion. Keeps eyeing the monitors. Grayson shrugged, popping a donut into his mouth. He's a rookie, probably overthinking his first big arrest. Let's hope so, Vance said, his eyes narrowing. Last thing we need is him poking around. Lena watched Bennett through the cell bars, catching his shadow as he paced the hallway. She spoke, her voice low but clear. You've seen something, haven't you, Officer Bennett? He froze, startled. I don't know what you're talking about. You do, Lena said, her dark eyes piercing. You've seen the cracks. The question is, what will you do about them? Bennett's jaw tightened. I'm just doing my job. That's what they count on, Lena replied, her tone soft but pointed. People like you looking the other way. He stared at her for a moment, then turned and walked away, her words echoing in his mind. Back at his desk, Bennett's doubt turned to resolve. He opened a secure email channel, his hands trembling as he typed a message. There's something wrong at Crestwood PD. Case files attached. Please investigate. He attached Vance and Grayson's suspicious reports, dozens of arrests with eerily similar patterns, mostly targeting people of color. He hit send, his breath catching. It was a risk, but he couldn't stay silent. Across town, a black SUV rolled to a stop outside a plain office building. 3 agents stepped out, led by Agent Claire Ramsey, a veteran with a no-nonsense demeanor. She checked her tablet, her eyes scanning the screen. We've got the kid's email, she said. Matches Harris's signal. Let's move. Inside the station, the air grew heavier. Bennett avoided Vance's gaze, his guilt etched in his tense shoulders. In her cell, Lena sensed the shift, her lips curving into a faint smile. The pieces were falling into place. Vance and Grayson thought they were untouchable, but their confidence was their weakness. She'd seen men like them before, arrogant, sloppy, blind to the storm brewing around them. Bennett glanced at the cell block monitor, where Lena sat motionless, her composure unnerving. He didn't know what he'd unleashed with that email, but he felt the weight of it. The station's hum seemed louder now, every sound amplified by his nerves. He looked toward the break room, where Vance and Grayson laughed, oblivious to the net closing in. Bennett's hands clenched under his desk. He'd done the right thing, but at what cost? Lena leaned back against the cell wall, her eyes half closed. She could almost feel her team's presence, their movements precise and invisible. The officers had started this game, but she would finish it. All she needed was a little more time. The Crestwood station's front doors swung open, and 3 FBI agents strode in, their black suits crisp, their badges catching the fluorescent light. Agent Claire Ramsey led the group, her presence silencing the bullpen's chatter. Officers froze, their coffee cups hovering mid-sip. At his desk, Noah Bennett's heart pounded as he watched, realization dawning his email had brought them here. He wasn't sure if he felt relief or dread. Ramsey approached the desk sergeant, a grizzled man with a permanent scowl. "We need access to your records and holding cells," she said, her voice firm. Immediately, the sergeant blinked, his hand twitching toward his radio. "What's this about?" "Federal investigation," Ramsey replied, her tone brooking no argument. "Cooperate, and this goes smoothly." The sergeant hesitated, then nodded, gesturing toward the hallway. "This way." Vance and Grayson emerged from the break room, their laughter dying as they saw the agents. Vance's eyes flicked to Bennett, suspicion hardening his gaze. Bennett looked down, his hands clenching under the desk. The air in the station thickened, tension coiling like a spring. In a cramped interrogation room, Ramsey's team set up a portable server, plugging into the station's network. The tech agent, a young man with quick fingers, scanned the files. "Got something," he said, pointing to the screen. "Vance and Grayson's arrests, same pattern every time. Traffic stops, planted drugs, no witnesses. It's systemic." Ramsey's jaw tightened. "Pull everything. I want every report, every piece of evidence they've touched." In her cell, Lena heard the faint hum of activity beyond the hallway. Her instincts told her the moment was near. She sat still, her hands resting in her lap, her composure a quiet force. The cuffs had left faint marks on her wrists, but she ignored them. Her focus was on the endgame. Vance paced the break room, his coffee forgotten. "This is about her, isn't it?" He muttered to Grayson. "The feds don't just show up for nothing." Grayson's face paled. "You think they know?" "Know what?" Vance snapped, but his bravado was crumbling. "We followed procedure. Grayson didn't." Reply, his eyes darting toward the bullpen. An agent appeared at Lena's cell, the door buzzing open. "Ms. Harris," he said, his tone respectful. "You're free to go." Lena stood smoothly, her movements deliberate. She stepped into the hallway, the station's fluorescent lights harsh after the cell's dimness. As she passed Bennett's desk, their eyes met. "Thank you," she said softly, her words carrying an unspoken weight. Bennett nodded, his throat tight. He didn't know the full scope of what he'd done, but he felt its impact. In the interrogation room, Ramsey faced Vance and Grayson, her expression unreadable. She slid a stack of photos across the table, security footage showing them handling the bag. Before Lena's search. "Care to explain?" she asked, her voice cutting. Vance forced a smirk. "That's nothing. We were securing evidence." Ramsey raised an eyebrow. "Really? Because we've got audio from Ms. Harris's device. You plan to frame her?" Grayson's hands shook, his face draining of color. "You can't use that." He stammered. "It's admissible," Ramsey said, leaning forward. "And it's just the start. We've got dozens of. Your case is under review." Same mo, same lies. Vance's shoulders sagged, his defiance flickering. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. Outside, the station buzzed with whispers as officers watched their colleagues unravel. Bennett sat at his desk, his heart racing. He'd sparked this, and there was no going back. Lena stood near the entrance, watching the chaos unfold. The storm she'd waited for had arrived, and it was only the beginning. The interrogation room was stark, its metal table reflecting the harsh fluorescent light. Derek Vance and Paul Grayson sat across from Agent Claire Ramsey, their earlier confidence replaced by unease. Ramsey's stack of evidence photos, audio transcripts, case files loomed between them. She leaned forward, her voice steady. "Let's start with the bag. Security footage shows you holding it before the search. Explain." Vance tried to hold his smirk. "We found it in her trunk. Standard procedure." Ramsey slid a photo across the table, the timestamp clear. "This says otherwise. You had it in your hands." Before opening her trunk, Grayson's hands gripped the table, his knuckles white. That's a mistake," he stammered. "No mistake," Ramsey said, her tone sharp. "We've got audio from Ms. Harris's device. You discussed framing her, step by step. Want to hear it?" Vance's jaw clenched, but he stayed silent. Grayson buried his face in his hands, his voice muffled. "We're done, Derek. They've got everything." Ramsey's eyes narrowed. "You're just getting started. We've pulled your past cases, dozens of arrests, same pattern, traffic stops, planted drugs, mostly targeting people who look like Ms. Harris. This isn't one bad night. It's a career." Outside, the Crestwood station was in disarray. Officers whispered in the bullpen, their glances darting toward the interrogation room. Noah Bennett sat at his desk, his hands trembling. He'd been questioned earlier, confirming details about the station's processes. His role as whistleblower was clear now, and the weight of it pressed on him. Some colleagues glared, their loyalty to Vance and Grayson unshaken. Others nodded quietly, respecting his courage. Lena stood near the station's entrance, her composure unbroken. She watched as Vance and Grayson were let out in handcuffs, their faces grim, their arrogance stripped away. The bullpen fell silent, the clink of the cuffs echoing. Agent Ramsey approached her, a folder tucked under her arm. "We've got enough to bury them," she said. "Charges are being filed: falsifying reports, planting evidence, abuse of authority. Your record's clean." Lena nodded, her voice low. "Make it stick." Ramsey's lips twitched, a rare hint of warmth. "It will. We're tearing this place apart." Lena glanced at Bennett, who stood by his desk, his expression a mix of relief and uncertainty. She gave him a small nod, acknowledging his role. He'd taken a stand, and that was no small thing in a place like Crestwood. The news broke that evening, headlines screaming, "Crestwood cops arrested in corruption sting." Vance and Grayson's mugshots dominated every screen, their names synonymous with disgrace. The station faced a reckoning, with internal investigations uncovering more officers tied to similar schemes. Resignations piled up as the chief scrambled to save face, promising reform. Lena met Bennett at a quiet diner days later, the hum of conversation a stark contrast to the station's chaos. He fidgeted with his coffee cup, his voice low. "I wasn't sure you'd come. You earned this," Lena said, her tone firm. "Not many would have done what you did." Bennett looked down, his shoulders tense. "I don't know if it mattered. The station's a mess, and there are others like them out there." "It mattered to the people they hurt," Lena said, her eyes steady. "And it mattered to you. Don't forget that." He nodded, a faint smile breaking through. "What about you? What's next?" Lena leaned back, her expression unreadable. "Next mission. There's always another fight." As she left the diner, the night air was cool, carrying a sense of finality. The storm had passed, but its ripples would linger, reshaping Crestwood and beyond. The fallout from the Crestwood scandal was swift and unrelenting. Within hours of Derek Vance and Paul Grayson's arrests, news outlets pounced, corrupt cops exposed in Maryland's sting. Their mugshots looped on every channel, their names etched in infamy, the charges falsifying reports, planting evidence. Abuse of authority carried the promise of long prison sentences. Their careers were over, their reputations shattered. The Crestwood police station became a battleground for reform. Internal investigations uncovered a web of misconduct, implicating more officers in similar schemes. Resignations flooded in, and the chief's press conference, filled with promises of transparency, did little to quell public outrage. The community demanded change, and the scandal became a rallying cry for justice. Noah Bennett found himself at the center of it all. As the whistleblower, he faced a divided station. Some colleagues shunned him, loyal to the old guard, while others quietly supported his courage. He didn't care about the glares. For the first time since joining the force, he felt a sense of purpose. His actions had freed Lena Harris and exposed a rotten system. That was enough. Lena's name stayed out of the headlines, a deliberate choice by her CIA team. The focus remained on the officer's crimes, not her role in dismantling them. She preferred it that way. Fame was a liability in her line of work. Her mission in Crestwood was complete, the charges against her dropped, and the cases tied to Vance and Grayson's misconduct were reopened. Innocent people were exonerated, their lives slowly pieced back together. Weeks later, Lena sat in her sparse apartment, packing a small bag. A dossier lay open on the table, detailing her next assignment, a new city, a new target. She glanced at it briefly, her mind already shifting gears. The phone buzzed, and Agent Claire Ramsey's voice came through. Ready for the next one. Lena's lips curved. Faintly, always. She met Bennett one last time at a park bench, the autumn leaves swirling around them. He held a coffee cup, his posture more relaxed than before. "You didn't have to do this," he said, his voice soft. "Meet me." "I mean, you took a stand," Lena replied. "That's worth a conversation." Bennett nodded, his eyes distant. "I keep thinking about what you said about making a difference." "I hope I did." "You did," Lena said firmly. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared experience settling between them. Then Lena stood, her bag slung over her shoulder. "Stay sharp, Bennett." "You too," he said, a small smile breaking through. In court, Vance and Grayson stood defeated, pleading guilty to multiple charges. The gavel fell, sealing their fates decades behind bars. The cases they'd built on lies crumbled, and Crestwood began to heal, spurred by community leaders who used the scandal to push for deeper reforms. Lena stepped out of her apartment, the door clicking shut behind her. The night air was crisp. Carrying the promise of new challenges, she disappeared into the shadows, her steps silent but purposeful. The fight for justice never ended, but for now, she carried the quiet satisfaction of a battle won. The truth had prevailed, and that, for Lena Harris, was enough. As Crestwood rebuilt, the ripples of her actions spread, a reminder that even in the darkest corners, the truth could shine through. And somewhere, in another town, another storm was brewing, waiting for Lena to meet it head-on.